Welcome to today's lab session. Now, today's lab session is all about the NoPrompt tool. Okay, so this is the tool that we have made. It will going to help you in identifying the conditional access gaps that are there in the client environment or whatever environment you are going to audit this. Okay, so as a red teamer or as a security professional, you can use this tool to see and identify the gaps. And maybe if you are a teamer, you can externally use it and craft your attacks for the next one. Okay, let's start. A little bit about myself. My name is Saksham Agrawal. I work as a senior security consultant at Nosa Secure, where my most of the work is around the cloud security research, building labs, building trainings. That's what I do most of the time. Now, before talking about, before deep diving into our main agenda, this is the today's agenda. Okay, so first we are going to talk about the conditional access overview, what really conditional access is. Then we are going to talk about the misconfigurations that are there. Okay, how things can go wrong if you configure the conditional access policy in a wrong way, and what as an attacker you can how you as an attacker you can utilize this information. We are going to tell you about that. Then we are going to talk about the real world case studies, where we are going to talk about the blogs first from the Microsoft. Then we have certain pen testing findings with us, which we do in our pen test engagement activities. Okay. Post which the main thing will going to come up, that is introduction to a NoPrompt tool, and what are the different use cases, how you can utilize this in your pen test engagement, or if you are a security professional, you wanted to secure, identify the gaps of your environment, you can use it. How we are going to tell you on that. The last will be the hands-on lab, where we are going to showcase you the two scenarios each. Probably the second scenario will be as the homework, okay, depending upon the time which we are going to get. But I'll share the solutions and everything with you, and the live will be up till like tomorrow, so you have enough time to utilize it. Okay. So conditional access policy. Now, what really is the conditional access? So conditional access policy is a security feature in the Entra ID. As you guys might know, at the time of login, if the environment is enabled with the conditional access policies, what really happens is at the backend, if you are going to log into your environment, what will going to do happen is first conditional access will going to fetch the information. Okay, at the time of login, like we have the user information like the username, the request is coming from which device, which location. Then it will also going to identify and like create the risk type. Now, when I say risk, what I mean is consider like you have logged into your Microsoft account from like past year from one location, like the US or the West. But suddenly now, after 5 years, you suddenly logged in from the India region. Then it's a kind of an anomaly, right? Because suddenly the login is shifted from the other location, right? That's where the Microsoft Entra Intelligence will going to create the risk as medium of whatever severity you have configured in the conditional access policy. So this is mainly what we say as signal. Okay. So conditional access policy will going to first check the signals, and based on the conditions that are defined in those policies, it will going to take the action. Now, the conditions which are defined in the conditional access policy are mainly based on the if-then logic. For an example, if a user is login, if your user wants to log in the O65 portal like, then they must complete the multi-factor authentication. So these are certain conditions that you define in the conditional access policies, right? But the conditional access will going to verify the signal, then only if we're going to let you in if the conditions are met. So it will going to first verify each and every conditions. If it is met, or if there is any certain decision that it has to be taken or action that you have defined, it has to be taken, you need to complete that. Like multi-factor authentication, you need to complete that. Then only you will be able to access the Azure environment or whatever Azure suite or things like that. every process will be real time. So, but you as a user don't have visibility on that. It will going to work in the real time only. So that is something that conditional access policy is. Now, these are the conditions that are there in the conditional access policies. So if you see in here, we have defining the users. Similarly, for each and every option, we have include and exclude. So here, if I select the locations, if I have to configure the device platform, I have two options, whether I can include that or I can exclude that. Now, one thing to note here, if I exclude it, the conditional access policy flow will going to exclude it completely. What I mean by that is the condition will be completely bypassed in that case. So that really is the misconfiguration that is there. We'll be talking about that as well. Similarly, in the conditions, you define the users, who you wanted to scope into your conditional access policy, the location, whether you wanted to create or configure the geo bypass restrictions, so you can configure that as well. Then you have the device. In the device, you need to actually define like whether it's a managed device or a Azure managed device. You wanted to define those condition that will come under the devices here. You see device platforms. Then you have the app. This is very main thing. So app is something that is going to define the target resources. So for an example, if you log into the O365 application and you wanted to create these conditions into the Microsoft Azure, then you must select those applications in the target resources. So that conditional access policy will going to scope it with that application. Then you define the risk, as we have talked earlier. So I'll not take much time on this. Now we have talked about what really conditional access policy is. What is the conditional access? What are the conditions that we define as an administrator? But what about the common conditional access policy gaps? Because it's supposed to be the security feature, right? Why we are here? So, in my experience, what I've seen, the selective app targeting is something that is the most common misconfiguration that is out there while defining the conditional access policies. Where like if you are defining certain applications that needs to be bypassed for the just for the developer convenience, that's where they define or exclude the application completely. Now that happens, then there is a door open for the attackers. So you can use that particular application to bypass the conditional access policy completely. Okay. Similarly, you have the account exclusions, where most of the times what I have seen, if their security posture of a company is not that much mature, then there could be the case that privileged account would be completely excluded from the conditional access policy. Then we have the location misuse. This is where I'll take a moment to discuss about one of my pen test engagement finding. So I found there was a internal network pen test that I was doing. So I got the access to the VPN as well by the company itself. That is fine. But what happens is when we run the network pen testing, tools, we found out that there is a Jenkins server page that is exposed completely. That is fine, but that is unauthenticated Jenkins. So if you are connected with the VPN, you are going to get access to that particular Jenkins page, and it is unauthenticated. And that VPN was supposed to be accessible by 10,000 of the company employees. And that Jenkins server, if you know a little bit about that, it has a functionality to execute the arbitrary commands. So it will going to provide the remote code execution to anyone, pretty much anyone which is connected with this particular VPN. That is something that is very common while configuring the location where you define the IPs or define the geolocation. Similarly, it could be with the geolocations as well. We'll be discussing that as well in the coming slide. So that is something that will going to make things more good for us. We'll be talking about that. So that's how there is a conversation you can see between a developer and a security engineer. Here, the developer is insisting to whitelist a particular application completely from the conditional access policy. This is fine though, but what happens is it will going to open the door again for anyone, pretty much anyone, to completely bypass the conditional access policy. But if you see in the later conversation with the security engineer is asking to create the device-based or the network-based condition to mitigate the risk a little bit, not much, but that's how you can compromise a half an hour for the developer convenience and the security portion as well. Now, this is actually the blog findings from the Microsoft Incident Response team. If you are not aware of, Microsoft Incident Response team is the one which is the first responder to any sort of breaches that is happening in the Azure cloud. So if you are a customer and your account is hacked completely, then you need to contact the incident response team to recover your account. So they have a very good experience in terms of the what are the common attacks that happens because of which customers lose their account. In their findings as well, they released this blog in the December 23. You can use this reference link as well. I'll going to share this link in the chats as well. So there they also identify that sometimes what happens is conditional access policy, if they are misconfigured, then it will going to lead to the security. I mean, it will make the security portion vulnerable to the attackers. Before deep diving into our tool and everything, I just wanted to take a moment to define some key APIs. So there are 3 right now, which is like the base for the Azure. So every time that you are going to use the Microsoft 365 suite, its application, the Microsoft Graph API is something that will going to work in the backend. So even if you are logged in from the portal, if you are logged in from the CLI, all those requests will going to use the Microsoft Graph API in the backend. Okay. Then you have the Azure AAD Graph API. If you are a pen tester, then you might be aware of this. That there is a tool of name Road Recon, which uses the Azure AD Graph token to let you enumerate the Azure environment users, its service principal, groups, and its permissions. So as an attacker, you can utilize this and use this Graph API to enumerate the environment. But this is something that will going to be deprecated by September, I believe. Microsoft has released some directives for this. Then you have the Service Management API. This is the main API, to be honest, because all the operation, all the resources that you are going to create inside the Azure will be using the Service Management API in the backend. So these are the key Entra ID APIs. Then we have the case study. So I was doing external network pen test with my team. There we identify that there are certain leak credentials that are available to us for that particular target domain. Now we don't know whether because it's external one, so we don't know about the architecture of that particular company. So what we do is we first check and with the Azure APIs whether the Azure environment is enabled or not for that particular domain. If you are aware of, there are certain APIs where you can just enter the domain name and it will going to tell you whether the environment is using the Azure in the backend or not. Then what we do is we use this in-house script, what we are launching in the tool, to basically run it against the leak credentials. So what we found out in the results is something surprising to us as well. Out of 14 those leak credentials that were working, 3 of the user accounts was having the access on the Azure subscription. And the one of the service account, user account provides us access to the service management API. How? Because there is a cap misconfiguration that was there. We utilized that and we just bypassed the MFA completely. And by using those leak credentials, we got access to the service management API credentials, token. And by utilizing that, we log into the Azure environment and state our privileges. We'll be talking about that as well in the coming labs. There is a particular scenario designed for this. So now we have talked about everything, but if you see the gap as an external pen tester or a security auditor, how you can utilize this information into your environment or your pen testing activities. So this is where we have made the NoPrompt tool. Now, what NoPrompt tool does is it is going to tell you about the whether on which particular user device or which particular API is providing you the single factor access. Okay, so it will going to tell you whether the uh, login is possible into the key APIs that was there we have discussed by just providing the username and password. So that's how it looks like. If you see in the results, if you see, we have the user agents. Now in here, if you see, there are 6 user agents that are there. In Azure, there are only 6 user agents that are there while defining the conditional access policy. So we have listed those, and if you see in the results, it will going to tell you whether the key API are accessible from these user agent via the single factor access or not. Not only to that, it will also going to tell you via the Chromium driver, we have added some functionality to that. It will also going to tell you whether the web login is accessible by the single factor access or not. So it will going to simulate the behavior that the request is coming from these devices, and it is requesting to these API or it is logging via the web portal. So it will going to tell you that, and based on that, it will going to tell you whether the access is enabled or not. So if you've seen here in the Microsoft Graph API and the Service Management API of the Linux user agent, we have the access granted, which means if we are going to use the user agent as Linux, and if we are going to use these API, we are bypassing the multi-factor authentication completely, which means whether these API are excluded from the conditional access policy or they have defined it such a way that they are not including this in the scope. So as an attacker, you can utilize this information and get access to these tokens, the Microsoft Graph API and the Service Management API. So these are the results. Then, but what if like your IP is flagged by the SOC teams, or if the region that you're trying to log in, so supposedly if you are trying to access this environment from the US, and there is a network restriction that is going on, which is completely like blocking the access from the US region. In that case, we have also created the functionality that is IP rotator. We are using the IP rotator here to route the traffic to the from the AWS region. Now, why it is important? If you know a little bit, the API gateway will going to simulate the or will going to send the request from the random IPs. So there is no way that SOC can block those requests, because the one more thing is this that these IP is something that will be random generated and will be coming from the AWS. So the request will not going to come from your device, and the Azure will think like, okay, some functionality might be there, and these are using this, and they can't block these IPs because it's coming from the AWS, right? For this, uh, we have added the IP router functionality. Now, if you see in the results, we have the US East 1 region, and we are using the US West 2 region and the OIU region. We are sending the request, and if you see in the tokens, it is truncated right now, but there is some functionality to that as well, where it will going to print you the token in the clear text. Now, it will going to, using this token, you can log in into the Azure environment from the CLI. We'll be talking about that as well. Why it is there? Because we believe that the Graph API tokens is something that you can use to log into the Azure environment. Okay, and these are the some key APIs. And in this functionality, it will going to use the known 10 regions known AWS 10 regions from the backend. Not limited to that, we have also added some additional capabilities or the advanced capabilities to this tool. Now, this tool also help you as if you are a pen tester and you have access to a lot of credentials, like from the database, like the league database, and you want to go in the one go, then you can use the cred file flag as well, and you need to specify the format. And the NoPrompt tool will going to run for against each and every username and password. Similar to that, we have also included the IP rotator support as well. You can read it on the GitHub page for more information. Because we have limited time, we have to start the labs as well. So that's where I will going to explore those features. Similar to that, we have the show token as well. Maybe I'll show you in the lab, which will going to print the token in the full rather than truncated. Now it's the lab time. Let's start. But before that, I would request everybody to scan this QR code for accessing the solution. Either you can do it via this, or you can go on to the solution.noprompt.live to access these solutions. So we have two scenarios like this. Control. So I believe everyone has access to those solutions, right? Okay, you need to proceed with the safety. It will going to redirect you to the NoPrompt solutions. So that's how it's going to be. If I go in there. So these are the user credentials in case you are not able to access the NoPrompt solution. You can access, you can take a note of these username and password. So the scenario one is something like this, that you need to run the NoPrompt tool. I believe that you must have completed the prerequisite for this lab. You need to run the NoPrompt tool. You can, and then you are going to use these user credentials to accessing whether the conditional access policy has some gap or not. And we're going to tell you that there is a certain API are accessible for certain different user agent. Post which you are going to know that, okay, there is a Graph API and the Service Management API accessible via the single factor access, and it will work. Then you are going to enumerate the Azure environment using this information, and you need to retrieve the flag. I'll be solving this with you. Just wait for 1 second. तो इसका भी टाइम पता 11:45 तक इसको खत्म कर देते 15 मिनट के टाइम तक करना खत्म हो गया इसको दो लाइट को दिखाई तो धीरे धीरे चुना करना है ये तो कर तो here so first we need to call the NoPrompt tool via the Python. And then we need to provide the username and password, which is user@noprompt.live. And the password I need to copy, just a second. Okay, so I have provided the password. Now, if you see in the results, uh, you can see that the Linux user agent and the Mac OS user agent, the single factor access is available using these API, the AAD Graph API, Microsoft Graph API, and the Service Management API. So, which means that single factor is accessible. Now I'm going to log into this APIs via the AZ CLI. Okay. So if you see in here, we have used the AZ login command and provided the username and password. And we can see that it does not require or prompted us for the multi-factor authentication. And we are logged in into the Azure subscription one. Then we have enumerated the permissions. What are these permissions are, I mean, available to this particular user, that is user at the NoPrompt. And we can see that it has a key vault secret user role assigned on a particular key vault, which is NoPrompt KB. Not limited to that, it also has access to the reader role on the resource group one. And there also we have access to the NoPrompt key vault. So we know that we can fetch the secret because key vault secret user role provides you access to the key vault secrets. So this information, I have tried to list down the secret first in the NoPrompt KV. And this is where we can see that it has a secret available name as flag. After which I'm trying to retrieve this secret value in the clear text. And we can see that it has prompted us with the clear text value of the flag secret. So this is how we bypass the multi-factor authentication completely and able to access the Azure environment. Now I'll wait for like 10 minutes for you guys to complete this lab. So now it's time to start the scenario 2. I'll directly jump onto the terminal for the better explanation, okay? So in here, I'm going to provide the scenario to username and password, which is admin@noprompt.live. And the password is written in the solutions. Now, if you see in the command section, you're going to see that I have run the NoPrompt tool and use the IP rotator functionality. Okay. Now, if you see in here in the output, all the requests are getting blocked right now. It says block require MFA, right? So which means these user agents and these API are not accessible from this region. What could be the case that there is some geo bypass restrictions that are available with the Azure region, right? So if you see in here, we have the full token. And the request is right now moving from the London region. Okay. So this is the Graph API token and the Microsoft Graph API token, the AAD Graph token, and the Service Management API token. Then we have again with the Linux user agent, we have access to all of these tokens again. So what I did in the command is I've defined the IP rotator region to the EUS2 only to save some time. But at the time of solving the lab, you can run it to entire region and you can for better explanation, for better debugging. and I've used the show token flag to print the token in the full. Which वही नहीं वो कर रहा हूँ just a second. Okay. Okay. So if you see in here in the above, I've supplied the token into the partial variable that is dollar token. Okay. Post which I'm connecting with the Azure account using this command, where I have supplied the account ID as random because this is something that you can do. And the access token I have provided the as the partial variable where I have stored the uh, my token value for the service management API. And if you see in here, uh, we are getting connected with the subscription that is Azure subscription one. So if you now correlate that our earlier request was getting blocked, but now we have provided token and we are connecting with the token and it is getting bypass completely. Now we are going to list the resources. And no. In the resources, we can see that there is a particular storage account available, which is mainly final flag value. The idea of this creating this particular lab is not to provide you ways how you can exploit the Azure environment from the inside, but to showcase how you can bypass the conditional access policy from the external perspective. How this gap can lead to the security. I mean, how you can as an external pen tester log into the Azure environment by bypassing the conditional access policy. So, I mean, these permission could be anything, and the resources could be anything. Now, if I type as get a sign, we can see that we have the reader role right now, which is scope to the resource role. Now, I'll also give you like we have left with 10 minutes. You can try this as well. Thank you for your time. And if you wanted to connect with me on LinkedIn, this is the QR code. If you have certain suggestions like this gentleman has it, please email to me here. If you have any doubts or something, you can connect on the LinkedIn as well. And this is the URL where you are going to find out the NoPrompt, though I think you already have it. So yeah, thank you for that.